Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the HBCU Gameday Podcast. I'm Tolly Carr. We are officially switching gears. The new year is here. Football is never really over, but basketball is taking center stage. And I'm so happy to be joined now by one of our new contributors, Olivia Antilla, which is the last time I'm going to say her full government name because she is affectionately known as Liv For Hoops. What's up, Liv, with the curly hair? Don't care. How you doing, girl?
I'm great. How are you doing, Tolly?
Hey, I'm doing great. This is our second broadcast together, but the first time we ever get to talk to one another. Liv and I were on HBCU Go together last weekend, but I just had to sit in the background and I didn't get a chance to talk to Liv. And joining us, as always, he's our guy. He's the plug from Jackson, Mississippi. Wilton Jackson in the house. What's up, man?
What's going on, Tolly?
All right, you are starting the new year with your tie. I know you're fresh out of the classroom. Look, man, I got sports journalist here. I have two educators here. This hopefully will be a high IQ podcast. So let's teach the people something. Liv, I want to start with you. We're a couple of games into conference play now. As usual, these HBCUs have these high-arcing out-of-conference schedules. They're punching above their weight, if you will. But we had a couple of surprises like we do every season. Southern women, they stick out. What are some key things you learned about this year's HBCU basketball universe when you look at the out-of-conference schedule from October, November, December?
Yeah, so a lot of teams obviously schedule hard. We have so many P4 opponents on the road, but a few D1s were able to snag some wins. Even Valley women snagged a win against Tarleton State at home. So I think what I saw as I watched throughout the early months was a lot of teams were competing, just couldn't put forth a full 40 minutes, which that's what you need in basketball. You need a full 40 minutes to the end. But a lot of those games were preparing these teams for SWAC, working through issues early on. And we're seeing that now in these early conference games of who is already in their momentum, who has those roles established. So who took advantage of those out of conference games, whether they were wins or losses, and grew throughout those early months in order to be prepared now in the early weeks of SWAC and MEAC and SIAC and CIAA play.
All right, Wilton, you're right there in the hotbed of women's hoops. Jackson State, for many years, if you wanted to win, it had to come through Jackson, Mississippi. Have come back to the field just a bit, but still a contender. What has your vibe been so far as we're now getting into conference play heavy?
I kind of take the same approach as Liv in a way. You have many teams still trying to figure out what they are, what their identity is, how they're going to play. Because again, you faced these tougher, non-conference teams, and you learned a lot of different things. But now you get into the nuts and bolts of like, okay, who is our team, and what do we need to do to be able to win games in our conference? And so I had the chance to watch Jackson State against Alcorn this past weekend, and what I saw was that. For a good majority of that game, it was a close game. It wasn't the prettiest game, though, and I'm sure, Liv, you can attest to that. I was
about to say it was kind of ugly.
No, not kind of. It was ugly. Like it was not a very pretty game, and so I think that a lot of times, when I think back to where Jackson State started last year, it looked very similar. Like you had a lot of players. They were out there playing, but you could tell that chemistry is still trying to be built. Didn't necessarily see a lot of like true sets being ran. Offensively and on defense as well. And Alcorn came back to win that game. So when I look at this, it's like it's still early in the season. It's the first week in January. Now I'm going into the second week. You really don't know what you have. I always like to say, really right after Martin Luther King, you'll really get a chance to kind of start seeing like where teams really land. And granted, things still won't be perfect, but you'll start to see teams get in a groove. You start to see, okay, what are my point guards who are going to be orchestrating our offense is like, what are they going to do? Like, what is our defensive identity? How do we pull out games in tight situations? Because by that time you would have had some of those scenarios, which you hope that you learn some of those things from, like, say, non-conference play, and you bring it over into conference play.
All right, Liv, I forgot to give people your extensive college hoops resume. Grad of FAMU, look, scored over 1,700 career points. Liz is still a walking bucket 10 years later. Liv, tell me about Carlos Funches, head coach, Southern University. They got some big wins out of conference. They knocked off a couple of P4s there. What does Coach Funches do so well at Southern?
Yeah, one thing that I think he's built his identity across, because when you look back, this is his 8th season at Southern as the head coach. He was there as the assistant for many years. When you look back statistically, Southern has always finished in the top 4 positions defensively in the SWAC. Many times they were either 1 or 2. So their bread and butter is really defense and generating easy points on offense. From that, we will see them throw a variety of presses, different types of zones, different types of run and jump man defenses. And we saw that early on against PV and Texas Southern, and why they were able to pull out double-digit early wins, because they are all on the same page. They go about 10 to 12 deep any given night, and people who can really contribute on the floor. But that's why their defense is so intense, because they keep a rotation. And they know that if you don't play defense, you're coming right back and sitting on those chairs, because it is a requirement to be a Lady Jag that you play defense. And so they are all bought in so early. The offense will come, and I truly believe that that's what they go with. As long as they score in the 60s, they'll win the game, because they are so confident in the defensive pressure that they can put on their opponents.
All right, let's educate the folks on who's playing as we sit here and talk today. I'm in Atlanta. It is a Thursday afternoon. We have some Thursday night games on tap in the CIAA. You see the schedule there. These are all doubleheaders: Virginia State, Livingstone, Elizabeth City State, Smith, Bowie State, Claflin, Lincoln at Shaw, Virginia Union at Fayetteville State. In the SIAC, Fort Valley State at Savannah State. Morehouse at Allen. That's men only, of course. We know there's no Morehouse women's team. Kentucky State at Albany State. CAU at Edward Waters. And the other guys from the OVC and the CAA. We got Tennessee State at Western Illinois. A&T versus Elon. Hampton at Campbell. Real quick before we look at some other graphics and other stats here, what is your vibe so far on the SIAC and the CIAA down at the D2 level, Liv?
So I think for both, it's extremely competitive. They all, like the CIAA, they're kind of inching in. They do where they play some conference games like early in November, but now they're in the full swing. Obviously, we're seeing for men and for women, 2 teams completely dominate right now. They're both on the longest active win streaks in HBCU basketball. Virginia Union men on a 13-game win streak. Winston-Salem women under new head coach Tierra Terry on a 12-game win streak. So those are the hottest teams in the CIAA, but you can never write anybody out, because we always see a super competitive field across both men and women. And in the SIAC, we're definitely seeing the same thing. The nationally ranked team of Miles already lost in conference play to Edward Waters. They are still nationally ranked though, but any given night, you can see anyone take any team down. And I think that's what makes it it's really good basketball, because it's so competitive and every team goes into the game looking to, completely dominate and be competitive so that they can come out with the win. Because even last year when we saw Savannah State men as a way lower seed take the SIAC title, it's always going to be competitive fields in both of those Division II conferences.
Wilton, can we just break up this, what I'm just going to call, I won't call it a lie, but I think it's a misunderstanding that the SIAC is a football conference and they are not hooping in the SIAC. I would say some years, Wilton, the SIAC has been a better basketball conference than the CIAA. And I'm a CIAA guy. I graduated at Winston-Salem State. Can we just break up that myth that it's all about football and football only in the SIAC?
Now, Tyler, you better be careful. You just said you went to Winston-Salem State, so you don't want your Ram fans to come get you. But no, to your point, it definitely has become more of a basketball conference. You've seen some really great basketball, especially in the tournament last year. Like, you saw some surprises, some upsets, and it really just speaks to the level of talent that you have throughout all the schools in the conference. And then more so the fact of when you get to the tournament, like, that's a time where whatever you did in the regular season, you can just essentially in a way, throw it out, because at the end of the day, you still have to win, and you have to win to advance. And Liv knows this. Survive and advance. You want to basically be able to compete and keep competing to win a championship, to get to the next round, or to enter a tournament. So in knowing that, the SIC has definitely improved in terms of basketball.
All right, let's take a look at some of the leading scorers. We'll take a look at the top 10 for men and women. And now what we've done here is we have just combined Division I and Division II. And I think that's fair because in football, I think it's a little different because you got different, amounts of scholarships, the offensive line, defensive line. But I think in basketball it's more equal. So I made that all by myself. And so that's the decision we're going with. All right, top 10 scores for men. We got Tayron Joseph from Prairie View A&M, Elijah Dawson from Lane, Michael Jacobs from Southern. Liv, I had to do a double take to make sure this wasn't a typo. So for Lane, we got two guys named Elijah, and they both are scoring over 20 points a game. You see Tyree Boykin there for Winston-Salem State. That's quite a combination at Lane College there.
It is. And I was surprised too, because I usually every week go in to see like how the points per game is shifting. I was like, both of them are Elijah? That can get super confusing for their opponents of, I got this one, I got that one. So that speaks to the recruitment that they've done at Lane to really bring in players that can succeed and score within their system. And when you have two players averaging 20 points, it's really hard to take both of them away. So when one gets hot and then the defense shifts their focus, then the other one gets going. And I think we've even seen that throughout games of Greer Dawson, one game will go off for 30 plus, and then the next game, Lewis will follow it up with his own 28-point performance. And so they kind of just feed off of each other, but it's really rare you see two players on the same team averaging over 20 points per game.
All right, let's take a look at 6 through 10, rounding out the top 10 HBCU scores. Getting a bucket is Michael James from Mississippi Valley State. He's our last player to average at least 20 points per game. He's followed by Larry Howell from Fayetteville State. Deshaun Ruffin, the preseason player of the year in the SWAC at Jackson State. He's at 19 points. Gage Lattimore from North Carolina Central at 18.9, and Aziel Blackwell, Kentucky State, 18.4 points per game out of Kentucky State. Okay, I'm just going to throw this out. Let's take a look at the women, and then we'll talk more. Miss Garner at Clark Atlanta. She's our leading scorer at 20 points a game. Ania Allen at Fort Valley State. Atkinson at Shaw. Lewis at Claflin. And Ariana Durrell at Tuskegee at 16.2. Let's take a look at 6 through 10. You see there represented Allen, Prairie View A&M with Liv. Here we go again. Two players hard to stop. Crystal and CJ, both over 15 points per game, and more from Lane College on the women's side, along with Zania Thomas from Howard. Does that philosophy still hold up, that it's just hard to guard when you got two players who are giving you basically identical outputs offensively?
Yeah, and I think with Prairie View, those two definitely have. In basketball, it's called the green light, where your coach tells a player, you can basically do whatever you want on offense. There's no shot that's off limit for you. And I actually think both of them have the neon green light. So it's extra, extra bright. They have the ultimate go to take the shots they want to take, create the ones. And we'll see if you watch their games, they definitely do take whatever shot they want to take. And so I think that's what makes them even more difficult to guard, is because you don't know really what they're going to do. Especially with Schultz, she's a good 3-point shooter, and she loves to pull the trigger. And so it's really pick your poison of, a lot of teams don't have two really, I would say, high level on ball defenders. And with both of them being, they can break you off the dribble, they can create their own shot. It can become very, very difficult. I wish they would add a few more people to the party, but they're doing with what they have so far this season.
All right, Wilton, what did you think about my executive decision to combine Division I and Division II players together for our scoring, top scorers ranking? I think unlike football, and look, we've seen D2 football players end up with D1 scholarships, so I don't want to make too big of a deal there. But I think basketball is more even of a playing field. If you can score, you can score.
Oh, absolutely. You'll see more athletes, more and more like they start off at smaller schools and then come to Division I schools like within like the SWAC or the MEAC and be successful. Like we've seen it happen on the women's side before. And so the thing is just like to your point, if you can score, if you can get the ball to your teammates, if you can get rebounds and you can play at a high level and play with a certain level of energy, I think it's fine. So with you essentially pairing all the players together in terms of points to, show the range of players that we have amongst the HBCU landscape, I'm not mad about that.
Liv, we saw a lot of D2 representation. We saw SWAC representation. Not a whole lot from the MEAC in terms of highest scores in HBCU basketball. Is that because the MEAC will play probably more out-of-conference games than other conferences because they're not going to start early because of the limited number of teams? Or is it just a different style of play that's more low scoring in the MEAC? We're seeing that trend still early, with both the men and the women.
I think that a lot of the teams in the MEAC have a lot more balance this year. So it's like more of a balanced attack where they have a lot of players averaging, in between 5 and 15 or 10 and 2. And so it's a lot more balanced attacks, or we're seeing a team have one player who can absolutely, like Gage, he can absolutely light it up from North Carolina Central. And then other people have the ability to score too, but he's their primary person they're trying to run their offense through. So I do believe, and again, a lot of teams, so like for South Carolina State, they had a very tough non-conference schedule, not typically what we see from MEAC teams. Usually aren't playing a ton of ranked opponents. So I think a lot of these numbers will go up as conference play goes on, just as teams get more comfortable, but definitely more balanced attacks we're seeing on the MEAC side this year.
All right, good point there. Let's take a look at Saturday's schedule coming up this weekend. We got a full slate across all conferences. The SWAC, you see Jackson State, Alabama State, Mo Williams going back to his first stop in the SWAC. We got Alcorn State, A&M, UAPB at Texas Southern. Look, don't count out Texas Southern. Every year they get off to a slow start out of conference, maybe take a little time to get warmed up in the SWAC. Trust me, put your money on Johnny Jones. He'll have that team ready come March. Mississippi Valley State, Prairie View A&M, Grambling at Bethune-Cookman. We're going to dive deeper into that one in just a second. Over in the MEAC, South Carolina State, Morgan State, Howard at UMES. We're going to dig into that one. On the women's side, North Carolina Central at Coppin State. In the CIAA, Bowie State, Fayetteville State, Bluefield, Livingstone, and over in the OVC, CAA, we got Tennessee State at Eastern Illinois, Hampton at College of Charleston. All right, Liv, it's time to take our deep dive. Let's start with Lane versus Miles. That's a game that's coming up for the women. It's going to be a doubleheader, but specifically the women's matchup you thought would be one to watch. What do you like about this matchup?
So Miles is still ranked number 20 in the nation in the WBCA Division II poll. And then there's Lane. They're both in the same division. Miles is 11-2, 9-1 in conference. Lane is 8-2, 7-2 in conference. They have a common opponent I like to use for them is Edward Waters, because Edward Waters beat a SWAC Division I school, so they're very talented from the other side. Lane beat Edward Waters by 2, whereas Miles lost to them by 10. So that kind of showed me early signs of this is going to be a head-to-head really good matchup. They both average 71 points per game, and they both average double-digit margin of victory, and they're both really excel at offensive rebounds. They're both really good at the same things. And they both oddly average enough 15 steals a game. So both teams that really want to use their defense to turn to easy offense. They have some players to watch. They have Bernstein from Lane, who is their leading scorer at 15.2, Europe Brown, who averages 10.8. And then over for Miles, what I really enjoy about them is, I was talking about balanced attack, is they are an extremely balanced team. They have 11 players who average double-digit minutes, and their points per game range from, they have Jalen Shelby, who's their leading scorer at only 10 points per game, all the way down to 2. So Lane really likes to play high tempo, a team that pressures, and Miles is going to return that back. So 2 very similar teams. I think Miles beats them in the depth category, but that doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to lose the game. It just means with the players you play, you have to be a lot more strategic about not fouling and ensuring that, the defense is very sound. So we'll see similar teams battle it out for that top position in that division of the SIAC.
Wilton, can we just give some flowers to Edward Waters University, not only for women's basketball, but since they've joined the SIAC, they've made some noise in football. They weren't there at the end, but they had an interesting ride along the way. It has been a very, in my opinion, smooth transition across several sports for Edward Waters since joining in with the SIAC.
Absolutely, Tyler. And I think a lot of people don't understand how hard that process is to transition from one league to another. And it's not so much just about, some of the clerical things and getting paperwork in and stuff like that, but just the talent. That's one aspect of it. And then 2, like finding the right coach to coach this program and making sure that these players are getting the holistic experience that they need while also being successful on the court. And so a lot of times those 2 things don't always align initially. So to see Edward Waters, a program like this, continue to grow and kind of start laying the pieces to the puzzle together as soon as they have, it just really speaks volumes to what they're doing with the university and the coaches they have that are leading those programs.
All right, Liv, let's jump more into some of the games that you're going to be watching. Howard versus UMES women. That's going to be at Maryland Eastern Shore. Raise your hand if you have driven to Maryland Eastern Shore before. Anybody?
Technically, I rode there on a bus.
Okay.
I didn't drive.
Okay, but you went across the water, the bridge down into the tunnel.
That was back. I was at FAMU back when we were in the MEAC, the full MEAC, when it was A&T and all of them. So on a bus, but I was probably
that might be the most unnerving road trip in all of HBCU sports because, man, that is like the longest bridge. You're like, it's just water everywhere. And this bridge seems kind of small. And here's the tunnel. But anyway, tell us about the matchup. Logistics aside, Howard, UMES.
So I think Howard has been the most talked about HBCU team in all of HBCU basketball due to their early and ongoing success through out of conference play and them being able to secure 10 double-digit wins against D1 opponents. They're currently ranked number 21 in the mid-major poll, so number 21 out of all mid-major teams. But UMES was no slacker. They pulled out big wins on the road against Wichita State and were able to get up to 7 wins in the non-conference, which Coach Willis, this is only her second season there to try and get this UMES program on the right track. What is going to be really nice about this game is we have the number 1 offense going against the number 2 offense. So both teams that can get up and down the floor and score. They both shoot about the same from the field goal, so 38%, and they both average around 11 assists. Both teams are pretty deep. I would say Zaniah Thomas of Howard, who was highlighted on the top 10 scorers in HBCU basketball at 15.1, is really their engine, but they have other really important pieces like Zoe Stewart, who's averaging 12.6, their point guard. She's phenomenal. And then they have Niall Miller, who's really their defensive anchor. They go about 8 deep, whereas UMES goes 10 deep, like full 10. They're all averaging like 15 to about like 28 minutes per game. And their best players is Ashanti Lynch, who's averaging 12.1. And then on the inside, Brianna Barnes at 10.2. So we're going to see a really elite matchup of point guards going against each other, Lynch and Stewart. And then on the inside, a battle between Barnes and Thomas. And also, who wouldn't want to take down the number 21 team in the nation who was preseason to pick number 1 and has absolutely, Ty Grace has done a phenomenal job in year 10 of just showing what this Howard women's team can be. And I know they have their eyes on the prize, one game at a time, but I know them losing in the MEAC championship game back-to-back years was extremely tough. And so now they're like, we're going to run through the conference. We're going to get this regular season and then tournament championship and make our way to the NCAA. So I know that they're very focused on the goal, but UMES is no slouch, and they're definitely going to be a team to watch throughout MEAC play.
Wilton, Liv just alluded to it. You can be as good as you want to as an HBCU program, but if you want to get into that NCAA tournament, you have to win your conference championship game, or it's going to be hello NIT. That's just that. You may like it, you may not. Those are the facts. But every year we've seen, kind of these mini errors of a dominant HBCU women's basketball team. We've seen Jackson State. We've seen Norfolk State. Do you think Wilton Howard is ready to take over that mantle for maybe a year or two as that dominant program that can get in and continue that momentum? Because you remember Jackson State did it enough times that, okay, maybe you're not a 16 seed. We'll bump you up to a 14 seed and build that momentum that can help other HBCUs in the years to come.
I think so, Tolly. And like I said, you really have to look at like who's been above Howard in like the last couple of years. And obviously you point to Norfolk State and Larry Vickers. And of course, now he's at Auburn leading their women's basketball team. But essentially, the MEAC is Howard's to lose, in my opinion, with the players that they have in Zanaya Thomas, Zoe Stewart, like those, like they're the true core to how Howard moves, pretty much exactly what Liv just outlined. And so I think that if they continue to dominate throughout conference play and keep that same intensity when the tournament time comes, because again, like you just said, you get to that point of like, okay, we've navigated January, we've navigated February, and it's like, okay, we know what these teams are going to present us. They're not going to really show us anything new that we hadn't already seen. But the thing is, the beauty of like going into March is that like strange things happen. Like college basketball is just one of those things, like a shot that a player that he or she never takes, it's like, oh my God, it finally just went in this time. And you're looking like, man, we beat this team twice. And then all of a sudden we're put out in the first round. So it really heightens your senses to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's in every single aspect of the game when it comes to that time. And so I think when you think about that in terms of what Liv was saying, Howard, a team that hasn't gotten to the mountaintop, I can assure you that Coach Grace is going to make sure at this point now that they're going to get to the mountaintop by the time the MEAC championship rolls around and punch a ticket into the NCAA tournament.
That's the beauty of tournament basketball in college hoops. Every year you leave whatever conference tournament and there's one team that's like, I thought we were going to win. We were supposed to win. Wilton, I still can't get out of my head Southern beating Jackson State, nearly going coast to coast, that floating shot. And it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because in my mind, I said, that shot's not going in. And then when it went in, I said, oh, wow, it went in. And that changes everything. It changes everything. So that's the beauty of basketball. All right, speaking of the SWAC, Liv, let's take another deep dive. This time on the men's side, we got Grambling State going to Bethune-Cookman. We saw Bethune-Cookman live on national TV last weekend. They beat FAMU, both the men and women, both games. Exciting. Let's talk about the job that Reggie Theus is doing down at Daytona Beach. Not only is the head basketball coach, but the athletic director. The overall record may not look like, you just got to throw some of that out-of-conference stuff out of there. But last weekend, this Bethune-Cookman team looked very good.
Yeah, I think coming into the season, Bethune-Cookman came with all the hype. We saw media who was never even sniffed around the HBCU suddenly start talking about Bethune-Cookman. So in my head, I was like, okay, I saw on paper how talented this team was. And for Reggie to get players to return, it's very rare that you see players leave and then come back to the same exact school. And he was able to do that with players like Jacoby Hetty, who's actually leading them in points per game at 16.1. And then he was able to cash in Arterio Morris, who is a high star, was at 2 Power 4 schools prior to landing at Bethune. See how much I don't think I don't think about those Wildcats. I hate thinking about them. The Rattlers are always on my mind. They came out, really made a splash in their game versus Auburn going into overtime. And I think after that game, it kind of went downhill. It was a lot of hype after that game. And then suddenly they just weren't playing to their potential throughout the rest of the out-of-conference games. But then for them to come in, playing there is a very hostile environment due to how tiny and small the gym is. It oftentimes feels like the heat is on 90 because it's so small.
It's an intimate environment.
Yeah, very much so. And so for them to come out, and FAMU was hungry that game. Anyone who watched that game saw how hungry FAMU was to win against Bethune. But, basketball is a game of runs, and Bethune was able to get that final run and pull it out. And who doesn't want to start conference play at 1-0? That's a great foundation to build off of. And then for the team that they're going up against, they are for sure going to have their hands full. This is a team that I believe was getting a lot of attention on Twitter and Instagram due to how exciting their brand of basketball is. And their freshman, who's leading them in scoring, their true freshman, Antonio Munoz, who's averaging 13.5 points per game. But this is a high-flying team. They love the lobs. They love the dunks. They shoot the threes. They love to get out and run. And that's just the type of system that Patrick Crary has always said out loud across any type of podcast or interview that he loves to play. So we're going to definitely see a matchup of extreme talent in this game. It really is going to come down to whose defense is going to withstand and actually show up in this game. In my opinion, Grambling has the upper hand simply because they've shown consistently that defense matters to them. Not saying Bethune can't, but they've definitely been an offensive threat. They're similar in offense. They're less than a point apart of averages. So we will see a very high scoring game. They both love to shoot threes. They on average both make 6. So we're about to see a lot of buckets being made and probably a lot of ESPN top 10 caliber types of plays.
Wilton, we know at Grambling it's football first, but when you can get people talking about basketball, you're doing your job. And Patrick Crary, took over from a great coach who's now over at Alabama A&M. Grambling coming off an NCAA tournament appearance not too long ago. So the basketball program was in good shape. I'm not suggesting that it was not, but Crary's style of play, the analytics don't lie. Close to, long 3. He's not about this mid-range action. That is not what he does. How are the folks down in Grambling feeling about hoops this time of the year?
Tolly, I just got to say, if you're Patrick Crary, you have a point to prove. And I say that because, of course, we all know what happened with him, the FAMU situation. Sorry, Liv. But if you're him, you really want to be successful, and you really can't be mad about the start. Granted, you throw out some of the non-conference things, but he actually has a team that legitimately could really, really be good. And to Liv's point about, talking about the play of Antonio Munoz, I think he's obviously the key player to that team. If you're a Grambling fan, you should be excited about Grambling's men's basketball, really just basketball, period, especially on the women's side and men's side. And so you're getting a men's team that, if you haven't been watching, I think this is a good time to start watching, because I definitely think that with the style of play that Coach Crary is bringing to Grambling, I think you will see them win more games and continue to kind of build on what they had already started in previous years.
Yeah, Liv. Had a good thing down at FAMU, Liv.
This is what we're not going to do. But no, on it, really what Wilton said, if you need a game to kind of jump into, that for sure will be the one, because again, there's a lot of star power in these teams, and they're both high offensive teams. So it will be very exciting. And then they get to follow it up going down to Tallahassee to play the good old Rattlers. So a very good weekend of basketball ahead of us.
Yeah, you gotta make that Florida 2-step while you're there. Got to get your money's worth in the Sunshine State. You talk about McDonald's All-American. Look, Bethune-Cookman has a McDonald's All-American. They have 2 brothers that are top three in scoring for the team. You had the kid last week who stepped up. He's just in his 7th or 8th game back, and he took over the show. There are a lot of storylines, and I hate to belabor the point and make you talk about your arch rival, Bethune-Cookman, even more, Liv. But that team is as rich as any other team in the conference when you look at, just the background of the players and things that would make you emotionally invested in the interest of this team.
Totally. And I agree. I think they're a team that right now I have the biggest question mark around, because I see on paper, they are the most talented team. And a lot of people don't talk about Daniel Ruzon either, who is their returning post player. He's really key to their success as well. And they got an interconference transfer and Jordan Johnson, who's a shooter, they have it there, but I just need to see it translate over multiple games. They truly do have the players, the offensive aggressiveness, the skill set to really win and compete for the SWAC title. It needs to play out because, again, they were dropping games to mid-majors that even statistically, they were ranked higher than. And so I think that game versus FAMU really woke them up. If you watched, you saw Arterio Morris and Jaquan Sanders of FAMU. They started yapping at each other. And that game really turned Arterio up. Like, he was like, oh, okay, you're going to talk to me? Watch this. And he went and scored 20. And then Andrews, who, like you stated, that was only his 7th game back. He went off for 20. And so with all those offensive threats, they can go in multiple directions, but they're an exciting team. And I want to see them play to their potential because it's good basketball. Even if they are the little cats up the street. I love good basketball, and they have the pieces. Reggie truly does have the pieces to, if they were to win the SWAC tournament, to compete, in a play-in game if they were the 16 seed and win that game. So, you always want to see teams play to their full potential because that's what makes our conferences even better when we're having these dominant individual performances, but also team performances as well.
Wilton, I've never seen you in so much pain when you had to talk about Alcorn State or Valley. I mean, we really just took it out of Liv today.
Yeah, but everything she said is very accurate and it's spot on because, like, you talk about a team in Bethune-Cookman, like, literally what she said on paper, they look phenomenal. And if they are able to navigate conference play, the regular season slate, and get into the SWAC tournament and live up to the potential, depending on what they do in the regular season play, they could be a scary team.
All right, Wilton, how can people follow you, and what is your latest WNBA assignment? Because you do cover the W pretty extensively.
Man, between Unrivaled but really I'm knee deep in like SEC women's basketball, and then of course WNBA season will be right around the corner again after the draft in April going into May. But you can follow me on Wilton Reports on Twitter and on Instagram.
All right. And Liv, everybody knows how to follow you, but in case you just came out from under a rock and you don't know the go-to connect for HBCU hoops, let them know.
Liv For Hoops, FOR, not the number, on Twitter and on Instagram.
Liv, what is a typical week like for you? Like, keeping up with all this information, like, how do you do it?
I would say the non-conference was crazy, like, because teams are playing every day at random times. We got 10 a.m. games, 9 p.m. games. Typically, you'll see me with my laptop, my phone, and my TV out, especially on weekends. I try and really lock in on individual games so I can take really intentional notes. So I'm not just, talking to talk. I can analyze players and the teams, but throughout the week, I'm catching up on games to make sure I'm seeing what I actually saw. So it's nonstop basketball for me because we have D1, D2, NAI. Then we have the teams in the other conferences that still deserve our love, even if they want to be elsewhere, which is fine, but they deserve the same type of reporting. And so constant watching, taking notes, trying to just stay up to date and going back, and thankful for playback because without it, I don't know where we would be, to be honest.
Yeah. As a former player, again, with over 1,700 career points for those Rattlers just a few years ago, how much does that help you analyzing? And I know that may sound like a simple question, but, Wilton and I may look at something one way and you may see 2 or 3 different layers of the onion when you watch the game.
Yeah, throughout my whole entire basketball career, I was always a student of the game. So even when I was in high school and college, I was always watching game film prior to us having it as a team because I'm really just a basketball junkie. Like, I love watching basketball, and I've always just watched from the lens of not necessarily a fan, but a student to learn. And so that's kind of what's helped me grow my basketball IQ and understanding is I'm always watching to see the reads. Like, I'm seeing players make a pass. I'm like, why would you not pass it right there? And just kind of seeing things for what the coach is trying to implement, but just, always being a student of the game has helped me be able to analyze basketball now at a very deeper level than, a lot of fans or anyone else really wants to dive into.
All right. Coaching, is it in your future, Liv? Is it on your wish list?
I don't know. It's such a demanding thing, and just college basketball, I feel like I don't know if I have the patience for, because I'm like, I did coach for a little bit. I coached at a JUCO, high school, AAU. My last team before I stopped coaching was little kids, and that taught me the utmost patience with coaching. But for me, I'm like, when you're coaching college kids, it's kind of like, how do you not understand this? You're like, we're in college now. I shouldn't be needing to explain this very elementary, rudimentary thing to you. So I don't know, maybe one day if it's like the right opportunity, but for now, I will stay behind the screen.
Hey, Wilton, have you seen that thing on social with Rampage Jackson trying to show the guy how to?
Yep.
Have you seen it? Have you seen it, Liv?
No.
Oh, you got to look it up. Where he's like, step kick, and the guy's like stepping to the side instead of stepping forward, and Rampage just goes on.
It's like, like literally, you take a page out of Liv book. It's like, how do you not understand this? I just gave you the directions to do it.
Liv, when you see that, I want you to send me a text and tell me.
Will.
And tell me if that was your experience. That's funny. All right, that's it for this week. We got action on Thursday. We got action on Saturday. There's even a couple of games on Sunday. I was like, we're going to make a full screen for 2 games on Sunday. But Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, HBCU basketball. You check it out. You take notes at home. We'll talk about it right here next week on HBCU Game Day. For Wilton, for Liv For Hoops, I'm Tolly Carr in Atlanta. We will see you next time around.